In Revenge of the Sith, we see the shift between light to dark when Anakin becomes Darth Vader and purges the Jedi Order. This places the galaxy in a state of evil for over 2 decades. What ultimately overcame the Empire were Anakin and Padme's children, Luke and Leia, who grew up to become exceptional fighters. However, how would these events have changed in the timeline if Anakin killed Padme on Mustafar before she was able to give birth to Luke and Leia? Our story begins on Mustafar, where Anakin and Padme speak to each other. Padme can feel that her husband has changed. He always had this lasting anger and darkness from when he was a kid, but now it had come right to the surface. It became clear to her that Obi-Wan was right. Anakin had turned to the dark side. Confronting Anakin about this, he became enraged. As anger fueled his existence, he lashed out when Obi-Wan revealed himself from Padme's ship. Anakin lost every ounce of light he had left. He reached out with his arms, choking Padme in place. More anger was released when Obi-Wan commanded him to stop, but he didn't. He kept stealing the breath from his wife's stomach. Before he could even realize what he was doing, Anakin ignited his lightsaber and decapitates Padme on the spot, killing her. When he realized what he had just done, more anger swelled within him. Turning to meet his old master, he blamed him for what had just happened. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber, ready to strike down his apprentice. Now from here, the two would duel, which would ultimately result in Anakin losing his limbs and burning on the lava bank. Obi-Wan would leave him there when Palpatine would find him and eventually create Darth Vader. Padme's death would not alter these events. Obi-Wan would meet up with Yoda and Bail Organa, where they would discuss what to do next. Without Padme's children, the hopes for the galaxy wouldn't be born. This would impact the galaxy in a major way. Instead of splitting up, Yoda and Obi-Wan decided to stay together, with Yoda opting to not go into exile. This is because Luke and Leia have not been born. Yoda was able to go to Dagobah in Revenge of the Sith because the hopes of the galaxy were alive and would be trained by Obi-Wan. But now this is not the case. Yoda and Obi-Wan know that they have to do something to stop the rising Empire, but they are unsure on what they can actually do. Vader and Palpatine grow the largest empire the galaxy has ever seen. They use terror to command order, and the vast numbers of stormtroopers to command peace, or Palpatine's dogmatic view of peace. During the beginning of the Empire, there was nothing anyone could ever do to stop them. They were ruthless, destroying anything that had a connection to the Jedi. Vader spread himself across the galaxy, hunting and slaughtering any remaining Jedi he could. Yoda and Obi-Wan gained as many allies in the Republic that they could. Many in the Senate and across the galaxy hated the Empire and still believed in the Jedi. Obi-Wan sent a call out for any remaining Jedi to locate them. If they were to stand any chance against the Sith, they would need larger numbers again. This led to dozens of surviving Jedi returning to them. They fled to the outskirts of the Outer Rim, where with luck, the Empire would never find them, slowly rebuilding in peace. Teenagers such as Cal Kestis and Caleb Doom began training under Yoda. In time, the Jedi Order would grow from just Obi-Wan and Yoda to a class around 30 strong. But they had to be patient. They couldn't rush the training before sending them into battle like soldiers. It had to be calculated. Ahsoka also returned to the Jedi Order and continued to train. Obi-Wan would give her private sessions so that she could deepen her skills in the Order. For once, there was hope in the galaxy again. The Jedi were taught how to deflect lightsaber bolts, wield a saber in battle, and use the Force in all of its ways. They would grow extremely powerful, being taken from children and young teenagers to adults who have spent their entire lives learning the Force. Alongside the rising Jedi, the rebellion began to cause problems for the Empire. Different sectors rose up and fought back, knowing they weren't alone. This caused many different groups around the galaxy to call themselves the Rebellion, but they weren't united. When separated like this, they were vulnerable and prone to individual attacks from the Empire, which would lead to them being destroyed. If they were together, they could help each other and form united attacks against the Empire. After almost 20 years of the Empire ruling the galaxy, it became time to stand up and do something. Yoda decided to reveal the Jedi to the Empire. The Jedi were small, but their talents had 20 years of training to grow strong. Yoda knew the power these Jedi would hold in conflict. Revealing themselves would create an immediate target on their back and begin another galactic war like the Clone Wars. But for the galaxy to experience peace again, it had to be done. When they revealed themselves, dozens of these rebellion groups began to join together. Knowing that the Jedi were leading them caused thousands to join them. Suddenly, hope was rising throughout the galaxy. Civilians began joining the rebellion after hearing of the Jedi coming back to help them defeat the Empire. Palpatine was furious when he heard about this. He knew Yoda survived their duel, but never imagined he had spent his years patiently creating a new generation of Jedi Knights. He needed to set an example to stop the rebellion from gaining more numbers. This was the Death Star. He would finally show its full potential to the galaxy and instill fear within them once and for all. Moving to strike, he selected Alderaan as his target and destroyed the entire planet without blinking. Word of the superweapon would reach the rebellion and the rest of the galaxy. Planets would immediately bend the knee and stop any uprising that was happening. The Senate was outraged at this new weapon which they didn't know about, but Palpatine simply killed anyone who opposed him. He was a tyrant. Yoda and Obi-Wan knew that now was the time to strike. Entering the rebellion's headquarters, they explained their plan to everyone. Obi-Wan would take the Jedi and get them on board the Death Star. They would find Vader and make sure he dies along with the battle station. The rebel pilots would find any opening in the Death Star's defenses and blow it to pieces. They would have to leave immediately. Before they left, Yoda knew he was on his last legs. He went into bed after giving his final orders and closed his eyes for the last time. He was dead. Now we have to remember at this point that it has been 20 years since Revenge of the Sith, which means Yoda is ready to die. Spending his time training Jedi all day made him even weaker as well. But he dies with hopes he trained the Jedi enough to be able to defeat the Sith and the Empire once and for all. The rebellion set off on their mission, determined to win. Aboard one ship, the Jedi were pulled into the Death Star where they leaped out and revealed themselves. All 30 of them are ready for any type of conflict. They were immediately bombarded with gunfire from incoming stormtroopers. They were surrounded. It was almost like Order 66 all over again. A few Jedi fell to the bullets from the stormtroopers, but Ahsoka was able to take charge and slice down dozens of troopers at once. Before they could destroy them all, a dark figure entered the frame. Stepping onto the hangar floor with another 100 stormtroopers, Darth Vader revealed himself. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were struck to their core. They knew who this was, their former friend Anakin Skywalker. Words of betrayal were shared between them before Darth Vader pulled his lightsaber from his belt and ignited it. Rushing for the Jedi, he began to swing at anyone who came into his eyeline. The stormtroopers continued to fire upon the Jedi, landing any shots they could in order to help Lord Vader. Vader quickly sliced down Jedi to Jedi, making light work of them. After spending his days hunting them for 20 years, this was still his largest number of Jedi he had ever seen together, apart from Order 66 of course. Caleb Doom rushed for Vader and tried to hit him with the finishing blow, but Vader lifted him into the air with the Force and sliced him through the torso, killing him instantly. Outside of the Death Star, the rebel pilots entered orbit and began firing at the Death Star. Destroying turrets and external weapons, they grew closer to victory. From the rebel headquarters, they were alerted of a small hole in the center of the spaceship where they could implode the Death Star. As the ships moved to hit the small reactor, TIE fighters emerged from the Death Star and fired upon the rebels, placing them in a dogfight. Vader found Ahsoka and furiously swung his blade. Using his Form 5 fighting style, he channeled his aggression into killing her. She was arguably the most powerful Jedi in this room. As she blocked his attacks, she tried to parry with attacks of her own, but was hit in the leg by a clone trooper, rendering her defenseless against the incoming swing from Vader. Ahsoka's head came right off her body as she fell to the ground dead. Vader was on a rampage, simply raising his fingers and killing everyone he could. No one could defeat him. But it was Kenobi who would find the opening on the Metal Man. As they began their rematch, Obi-Wan forced the lightsaber from his grip and pushed him to the ground defenseless. This was it. Vader was ready to be killed. With only 11 more Jedi alive, they had surely claimed victory. The rebels were able to fight off all of the TIE fighters and return to the trench to fire at the reactor shaft. As they lined up their shot, the end of the Empire came within their grasp. But as they prepared to pull the trigger and destroy the Empire, out of hyperspace came a gigantic Star Destroyer that would obliterate the rebel ships momentarily. More TIE fighters were sent out, which completely overran the rebellion and destroyed them. Palpatine had quickly entered the fight after sensing the danger his apprentice and the Death Star was in. Palpatine flew a shuttle down into the hangar bay of the Death Star, gaining the attention of every single Jedi and his apprentice Vader, who was still on the floor. He stepped out before igniting 2 crimson lightsabers. With no time to lose, he leaped forward and began swinging at the Jedi, cutting Cal Kestis down before he could even raise his saber to attempt to block it. Lightning sparked out of his fingertips and landed on another Jedi before he threw Vader's lightsaber back. Vader stepped back to his feet and re-engaged with Kenobi. Their rematch continued. Palpatine made light work of every Jedi remaining in front of him. Palpatine knew all 7 forms of lightsaber combat and was by far the most powerful being in the galaxy. Kenobi, sensing death, couldn't hold on against Vader. Vader was able to tire the old man before slicing him through the abdomen and killing him. The final Jedi was dead. Together, Palpatine and Vader had destroyed any last hope of resistance against the Empire. They would continue to rule by building more Death Stars. The Empire grew so large in the galaxy that no one could ever dream of creating a rebellion again. It was over. The Jedi were dead and the Sith had won. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below and comment any other what if ideas you would like to see next.